From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson here. Ahead today, K-State's Jenny Ifft will share findings from her new study of energy development on farms and ranches, and if the presence of those energy sources influences farm financial management and economic decisions. She arrived at some unexpected results. Then K-State's Glynn Tonsor with his observations on the shutdown of several large beef packing plants yesterday because of a cyber attack on a major meatpacking firm. He'll talk about the various repercussions of that development. Later, USDA Farm Loan Chief Josh Ritter will join us for the latest edition of FSA Coffee Talk. And standing by with another Stop, Look, and Listen, K-State's Gus Vanderhoeven. All that here on Agriculture Today.
For information on threatening weather, you should depend on the National Weather Service and their broadcast on NOAA Weather Radio. NOAA Weather Radio is an all-hazards radio network that provides up-to-the-minute weather information, including life-saving warnings anytime, day or night. NOAA Weather Radio also broadcasts information on man-made disasters, such as chemical spills, Amber Alerts, or other national emergencies. For the National Weather Service, I'm Bill Curtis.
Thanks for tuning in once again for another Agriculture Today here on the K-State Radio Network. We have a great opportunity on this opening segment of the broadcast to let you know about brand new research which was co-authored by our guest out of the Agricultural Economics Department here at K-State. As we're all well aware, there's been a notable surge in energy development in rural areas, and not just fossil fuel development, but most assuredly renewable fuel types, wind turbines, solar farms, and the like. The long-standing question, what's been the impact of that development on our farms and ranches that would be harboring those energy sources? Joining us now is Agricultural Policy Specialist Jenny Ifft of K-State. Jenny, for context, share a few thoughts here on what we have seen in the way of energy development, which has been mushrooming in parts of rural America.
Right. In fact, by 2019, the U.S. was a net energy exporter. That means in the U.S., we produced more energy than we consumed. And this was due in large part to growth of natural gas production, but also renewables. And this is the first time this has happened since 1952. And it is an ongoing trend. And what's interesting as an agricultural economist is that a lot of this is happening on farmland. And with expansion of renewables, it looks like it's going to continue to increase. So for anybody that's driving through Kansas, you can certainly see this with all of the wind turbine. In fact, most wind turbines are on cropland or rangeland. It's not just renewables. I would like to give some context in the magnitude of production. So if you just look at shale gas production, 7 million acres of farmland was converted to drilling pads and related uses from 2000 to 2012. 7 million sounds like a lot. It's about the area of Massachusetts. The growth of solar and wind during a similar period has been pretty big. From 2008 to 17, wind power tripled, and utility-scale solar, that's sort of solar beyond home or business use, grew by a factor of 60. So huge growth in energy production. A lot of it's going to happen on farmland. There is one important point to make. Even if we had all energy production on farmland, it's not a threat to food security. We definitely have the capacity to do both. But that doesn't mean there's not conflict. In fact, there's a lot of local conflict in rural areas when you see energy going onto farmland.
Talk more about how that conflict manifests itself. It gets back to protecting farmland, but it goes beyond that, doesn't it?
Yeah. As a society, we have a lot of policies that protect or favor farmland and agriculture. Every state in the U.S. has use value taxation of farmland. That means farmland is taxed based on its use value to agricultural production, not necessarily development. So if it wasn't use value taxes, it would be a lot higher. There's a lot of private and public funds that go into easements for farmland to protect it from development. You also can have local zoning rules and other policies. On the other side, there's also policies that support energy or economic development. A lot of states want to support energy development. There are going to be restrictions that vary from state to state, but this is a general trend. I started this research in New York State at the time, and so my motivation was these discussions about not allowing or penalizing energy development, especially solar, on prime farmland. And this was on top of different ideas about property rights, what local government wanted. And in some areas, you had local groups or communities that would resist new projects. But my specific question, again, from the perspective of an agricultural economist, is if you restrict or penalize energy to develop on farmland, are you cutting off an important source of income for agriculture and potentially harming the farm economy?
And very little has been known about that to date then?
Yeah, there's a little bit of evidence, but not a lot. It's a question it's really hard to get all that data together to be able to answer the question.
So a few of the things you explored here as you looked at the data, you wanted to find out if farms that draw energy income actually invest more with that augmenting their normal income.
Right. And you know, most U.S. farms are family-owned. So you really have to think about the problem in the context of the family farm. So first of all, that energy income doesn't necessarily have to be used by the farm. As an economist, we say it could be used for consumption or family living expenses. So food, clothing, a new car, a vacation, anything like that. But if you assume the household needs are met or it's not going to be used that way, then the farm business can use the income. But assuming that it is available to the farm business, there's a question of does it need it? So, you know, a lot of farms, they do have good access to credit, and if they want a new project, they can find a lender to fund it. So maybe they don't have any trouble with access to credit, and they don't necessarily have a new investment that they want to make or additional production expenses they want to take on. But suppose there are some farms that can't get all the credit they need. In this case, you need the energy income to be sufficiently high, either to directly make that new investment or to make a lender feel more secure to extend additional credit. So there are a number of conditions that have to be in place that we talk about in our article.
Well, to explore all of this, you tapped into data already established by the USDA and tried to connect a few dots here.
Yeah, so there was a large farm survey in 2014 called The Total, in case you're interested. And I actually used to work for the USDA, and I had some input into it at the time. No idea that I was going to be asking this question. But what was nice is nearly 30,000 farms participated, and they answered questions about what was their access to credit like, what kind of investments were they making into their farm business, and whether or not they had energy income. Now, we used a method that's formally called propensity score matching, and what that basically means is we're comparing farms that are similar with and without energy income. So you don't want to look at a large farm or a small farm or, say, a ranch and a vegetable farm and see how they use it. So we try to get farms that are really similar, at least on paper, and see what they did with the income. So first we looked at credit access, and then we looked at a number of different measures of investments. And we largely found no evidence of a relationship, positive or negative. They simply had similar levels of investment and credit access, whether or not they had energy income.
That really is the nugget here, that as presumptions may be that energy income does, in fact, influence all of these other farm business decisions and management, there is no link there to speak of?
Yeah. And I was honestly, it surprised me at first. My whole motivation was, let's be careful about making these kind of policies if it's going to cut off this important source of income, or at least better understand this. And how I would interpret this finding is that it doesn't support broad claims that energy income is going to help the farm economy. On the other hand, there's no evidence that it harms the farm economy either. It's sort of neutral in that respect. But I mean, one of the headlines we quote in the paper is solar development on farms can save farmers and farmland. And the message I would say is one needs to be really careful with those claims. I think it could, and you're going to continue to hear stories about individual farms have been really helped a lot by energy income, and that's wonderful. It's not the average effect that we find in our study. We are talking about averages. You could also have different different impacts in different regions. There's one study in Oklahoma that shows that shale gas income did help some farmers make additional investments into land. So that's not necessarily a contradiction. It's just different local conditions. You could also think about it this way. If you have additional income, first of all, it has to be high enough. Farming is very capital intensive. If you think about the cost of a new or let alone a used combine, it's going to take a lot of energy income to make that happen, or even for the down payment. And on top of all the money that's needed, you need the money to be in a place where farms currently don't have good access to credit, and they have some potential for energy production. So I think one way is to look at it is that it's maybe just hard to get all those pieces together to see that impact. But remember, I'm just looking at agriculture here. So this income can definitely help the local economy. There's a lot of evidence that energy income does create jobs and wealth locally, and it's certainly going to help the rural families that own the land. There's no denying that. It's just about whether or not it has much of an impact on agriculture.
So really, when you share all of this, your hope here is this will lend more perspective on what is and isn't happening influentially with the development of energy, whatever form it might take.
Yeah.
And that policymakers will note it accordingly.
Yeah. We do have one study that other professors have done on the impacts of wind turbines on farmland values in Kansas, and they didn't find much of an impact. So I suppose you could say that this is consistent. It's also an area that I've just been sharing with different stakeholders. I haven't been here for quite a year yet. So it's an area that I'm hoping to do more research in. I don't have any particular ideas, but as new policies or new developments arise, it's certainly something that I'd be interested in looking into.
We'll be interested in hearing what more you uncover here. But again, rather illuminating findings from this study that you and colleagues put together, recently published in journal form. Congratulations on wrapping that part of it up, and thanks for sharing the highlights with us.
You're welcome.
Jenny Ifft is an agricultural policy specialist, K-State Research and Extension. Once more, looking at how the development of energy sources, particularly renewable energy, but not exclusive to that, does affect, in some form or fashion, farm economic and management decisions. Those are the results in some that she found in this work here on Agriculture Today.
Kansas farmers and ranchers are helping feed your family in the world. The largest contributor to the Kansas economy is beef cattle. How do you get that juicy steak on your plate? In order for you to enjoy your tasty meal, it requires the hard work of the producers, marketers, advertisers, processors, inspectors, transporters, packers, and consumers. So thank all these people and sit back, relax, and enjoy your tasty meal.
Welcome back. You're listening to Agriculture Today. Well, the beef cattle industry yesterday was shaken by another disruption in the industry, and this time that cyber attack on a leading meat packer. It actually forced the shutdown of several beef plants here in the U.S. Joining us now is livestock economist Glynn Tonsor, K-State Research and Extension. You hear from Glynn regularly here on the broadcast, and you were in the midst of discussions with a lot of folks about this upon JBS enduring this cyber attack, Glynn, and it caused quite a stir in the markets, obviously, this interruption.
It did. It would be an unexpected event that cost us some infrastructure in the near term. Effectively, JBS, for those that don't know, is one of the largest protein suppliers in the world. They have facilities not just in beef; they're multi-species protein producer, as I said, around the world. So their operations in at least Australia, Canada, the U.S. were talked at length yesterday in the media after the long holiday weekend. Was lots of discussion. Effectively, most of their operations were either notably curtailed or offline on Tuesday. My understanding right now is they're expected to be running here on Wednesday. Here in the U.S., they have at least 3 large cattle facilities. None of them are here in Kansas for our Kansas listeners, but there is Greeley, Colorado, Grand Island, Nebraska, Cactus, Texas. Operations are on the list here that are impacted. What I've been telling folks is anytime we lose processing capacity, when we're at a point where the capacity is full, and what I mean by that is we have more cattle trying to get in than we can handle given labor availability in the existing plants, That is not advantageous for fed cattle. So what we typically would expect to see is that depresses fed cattle prices and further elevates wholesale beef prices. And sure enough, that's what's playing out. The exact end of the day economic impact of all that is dependent on the duration. I'm going to be an optimist and say it was hours and days, not weeks. Again, it looks like here on Wednesday, those plants are going to be back to running. So this week's total federal cattle slaughter numbers are going to take a hit from that. But maybe 1 day, potentially 2 days at some plants hits is my best guess. And if that's the case, it certainly could have been worse.
For the record, there was a shortfall of some 27,000 head of cattle would have been processed, but for the shutdown, that did not occur.
Yeah, per USDA's preliminary estimates. So for those that really follow it, USDA puts out daily estimates for the country on federal inspected slaughter, and they are preliminary. 2 weeks later, they become final and official. And as you said, is well over 20,000 reduction of what we expected. For context, JBS on the cattle side it's been estimated about 23% of the capacity to slaughter cattle in the U.S. is represented by that company. It's 18-19% on hogs and so forth. That, of course, puts them as one of the larger producers, one of the four larger ones that operate in the U.S.
Interesting in the reaction of the market yesterday, which obviously retreated considerably upon this news, but it bounced back some. How do you read that market action yesterday, Glynn?
Yeah, so, the market always reacts to multiple things, not just one thing. UI and others, we tend to hone in on the latest event. There's a lot of things go into that. I want to remind folks, we have a very strong beef demand environment. Stuff coming across my desk is sort of unbelievable how strong the U.S. economy rebound is, and that is pulling up beef prices. People want beef. That's a good thing. They actually want all protein, but we're talking mainly beef and cattle here. So those signals, right, following the holiday weekend and so forth, were in the marketplace as well. If you broke down the market within the day yesterday, the market was down strongly early in the morning. And yes, we ended down. So, and I'm mainly referring to CME prices here. The live cattle contracts were indeed off about 2% when we looked at the end of the day, but they improved as the day went on. I think that was some pause and hope and some internal rumors that this was a hours and maybe a day or two, not a week or multiple week event. And I'll remind folks that's just the market kind of learning, right? So when we didn't even wake up on Tuesday, we kind of knew it before the holiday was even over. This event was unfolding. There was lots of uncertainty. About a year ago, we were sitting here doing a lot of these kind of talks. The bottleneck, we're in the heart of the pandemic. I was sitting there not knowing how long we would have a 40% reduction in cattle and hog processing, hoping it wouldn't last very long. And sure enough, we had a sharp V recovery. But it's important to remember the state of knowledge at the time was highly uncertain, just like 36 hours ago, the state of knowledge was highly uncertain on particularly the duration of this effect. Fast forward to now, most people think it's going to be a short-lived event.
Well, cyber attack issues are more at the forefront, it seems, all the time, Glynn. We think back to the Colonial Pipeline incident here of, several weeks back now. Now, this happens in the packing sector. Do you sense that the packing industry is aligning itself, putting up protective measures?
They certainly are, but that's also ever evolving. I've noted that in several discussions, not specific to cyber attacks, but the fact that the industry is in constant adjustment. And this would hold whether it's cow-calf, feedlot, packer, consumer. The situation we all operate in is always changing, and we all face multiple risk. If you want to hone in specifically to the packer sector for a moment, you have risk of procuring cattle. You have the price of those cattle risk. You have risk of having labor to run your plant. You have utility cost, those things. You have, I'll call them physical infrastructure risk. So fire risk and, just mechanical, things don't work right on the chain that day. That's kind of, I'm not an engineer, but that kind of risk. Then you have output risk, right? So are our yields down? What's the price risk there? So forth. And increasingly, we got to talk about other sort of unseeable risk, such as IT, cyber attack, and so forth. Now, for some of our listeners who are more likely to be in the live animal context here, the feedlot space has similar kind of story of multiple risk, right? So they have risk of finding feeder cattle, what the price of that will be. They have risk of will their workforce show up, what will the labor rate be. They have risk about what cattle performance, mortality, morbidity, feed to gain ratios, and that's all input and management. Will the feed truck start in the morning? You get all those kind of operational risk. I'm purposely belaboring this, is every part of our supply chain has lots of risk. It's not just one thing. Most of the time, you and I talk about the markets and therefore price risk. And even there, a feedlot has multiple price risk, feeder cattle, corn, and fed cattle primarily. But it's not just price risk, labor risk, financial risk, interest rate risk on your loans and the like. Why am I doing this to you, Eric? I think the cyber, IT system belongs on that list increasingly. All of our systems, your and I's personally, we're sitting here doing this interview, we have iPhones in front of us. Right. We're relying on connection. In many ways, that makes our lives, I think, better. Certainly makes us more productive and able to do more than we would have 20 years ago without a lot of that. But that also introduces new risk. The calls for backup systems and the like are there. I get that, and at some point they make sense. But backup systems that aren't used regularly are expensive, so we're not going to 100% duplicate everything and have half our capacity at any one point in time on the sidelines. That would be really expensive. The example I used in an interview yesterday was if you run a feed yard, you might think about keeping your old feed truck as a backup to your new one, but you're probably not going to buy two new ones and use one and set the other one in the garage until you need it. It's a real simple example, but you get the point, is sometimes it makes sense, and it does increasingly make sense to have backup systems in the IT space, but we can't duplicate everything perfectly and pretend that's free.
Right. The last point here, and probably the most prominent one coming out of this incident, Glynn, clearly adds fuel to the debate, which is churning today and has been for some weeks now over packer concentration and the ensuing impacts if something like this occurs.
Yeah, so that discussion, predates maybe even my life on this earth. And I'm being sincere when I say that, is there's decades of discussion about what is the concentration, what should be the concentration, and even the term concentration takes on different metrics. So are we talking regional concentration? Are we talking company ownership? Are we talking plant size? There's a lot of degrees even there. Sitting here today, most are thinking company name concentration, but even there we got to pause, because if the industry shares infrastructure intellectually, right, in the IT space, which they do, that's part of the efficiencies in our system, then it's not just company specific, although I recognize certain companies have different computer systems, but they also purposely talk with their customers and clients and so forth. So when we're talking IT robustness and so forth, you have to think not just company by company, but how those systems talk to your customers and your clients, those you're procuring cattle from, those you're selling beef from, and the like. And that's getting out of my wheelhouse pretty quick because I'm not a computer guy. But I encourage everybody to recognize that it's not just concentration is not a black or white thing. There's a lot of dimensions to it. All that said, even before this announcement, there was a lot of heartburn over what the industry structure was. It's well noted that the majority of the cattle that are processed in the U.S. are processed in facilities, the larger facilities in our industry, by 4 companies in particular. That's been the case for well over 2 decades. There's been lots of discussion about that for well over 2 decades. I do expect this will just be the latest thing, like the stake in the ground that drives that discussion further forward. My plea is always use data and economic logic to understand how and why the industry evolved the way it did. Is there ways to improve it? Sure, there's ways to improve any system. But again, I'm pleading for some data-driven, calm assessment. Let's do what is right for society as opposed to one individual segment.
Reassuring thing here is it sounds like this interruption will be very short-lived and will have very light repercussions for the industry.
Yep. Sitting here on Wednesday, that is my expectation. And I anticipate we'll keep talking about these risks. That's why we belabor the multifaceted aspects more in the future. But hopefully this was a short-lived thing that we all learn from and we move on.
And as a matter of fact, you are scheduled to join us next Monday for our regular cattle market segment. By that time, we'll have more to observe upon this development. So we'll talk with you again then.
I look forward to it, Eric.
Glynn Tonsor, livestock economist, K-State Research and Extension, with remarks concerning the JBS shutdown yesterday in the wake of that cyber attack on that major meat packer happening over the weekend. You're listening to Agriculture Today.
When you are in need of timely, reliable, and trusted information, K-State Research and Extension is here. Whether it's organizing people, information, or resources, they have the necessary tools. Community comes first for K-State Research and Extension. For more information and to connect with your county's extension agents, visit www.ksre.k-state.edu.
Agriculture Today continues now here on the K-State Radio Network, and we're around to time once more for another FSA Coffee Talk, our regular get-together with folks from the Farm Service Agency, state headquarters for Kansas. This time around, we talk with the Farm Loan Chief with the FSA here in Kansas, Josh Ritter, about a USDA farm loan development that has cranked up quite a bit of attention here of late. Josh?
Yeah, today I want to talk a little bit about the American Rescue Plan Act, or the ARPA. And more specifically, I want to provide the listeners with information on the debt payment program that is included under Section 1005 of this ARPA. Section 1005 includes provisions for USDA to pay up to 120% of loan balances to qualifying producers. And to qualify for a payment under the ARPA, a producer must meet the definition of being a socially disadvantaged farmer or rancher, as defined by Section 2501A of the Food, Agriculture, Conservation, and Trade Act of 1990. Members of socially disadvantaged groups include, but are not limited to, American Indians or Alaskan Natives, Asians, Black or African Americans, Native Hawaiians or other Pacific Islanders, and Hispanics or Latinos.
What loans are eligible for payment under the American Rescue Plan then?
Yeah, direct loans made by FSA are eligible for payments under this program. This includes farm ownership loans, operating loans, youth loans, microloans, emergency loans, and farm storage facility loans. Also, loans made under the FSA Guaranteed Loan Program are eligible. This would include guaranteed farm ownership loans and guaranteed farm operating loans. Rural development loans, FSA marketing assistant loans, and debts associated with other USDA programs or other non-USDA federal debts are not eligible.
Then how would the payments, again under what's called Section 1005 of the Act, be calculated here, Josh?
Sure. The 120% payment will be based on the loan balances of the borrower as of January 1st, 2021. This includes a payment of 100% of the loan balance that will be used to pay the loan in full as of that date. The remaining 20% portion is available for tax liabilities and other fees associated with the payment of the debt. Loan payments that have been received from the borrower after January 1st, 2021 will not reduce the amount of the American Rescue Plan debt payment from FSA.
Any direct or guaranteed or farm storage facility loans that were obtained after that date, January 1 of this year, eligible?
That's a good question, and the answer is no. Only loans made and advanced as of January 1st, 2021 are eligible.
Well, then how will the eligible direct loan borrowers be informed of the loan payment provisions, and what information would be included in whatever notification is coming?
Yeah, FSA will mail an offer letter to all eligible direct loan entities and borrowers in the coming weeks. The letter will include eligible outstanding loan balances, payment calculations, a request for direct deposit account information, and the designation of socially disadvantaged borrowers as recorded in FSA's files. Instructions will be provided in the offer letter to accept, decline, or request a meeting with FSA.
In anticipation of that, are there any things that borrowers can do in advance of receiving that offer letter?
Borrowers can contact their local service center to verify whether their eligibility criteria is recorded correctly with FSA. If an update or correction is needed, borrowers may either complete a USDA Form AD-2047 or work with their local FSA Service Center to update their records. Borrowers may also want to review their loan documents and payment history and compare this to the information in the offer letter when received.
Well, then, when will a borrower receive a direct loan offer notice, and when will the payments then be issued?
Our national office currently anticipates that most eligible direct loan borrowers will begin receiving their offer letters in June. After an offer letter is received with all the required signatures, it will take FSA approximately 3 weeks to pay off a loan and issue a payment to the borrower. Eligible borrowers can contact their local FSA Service Center with questions, but I'd recommend that borrowers wait until at least mid-July before inquiring about the status of their offer letter or direct payment.
But again, those letters ought to be coming out in the weeks immediately ahead. Is there a deadline for borrowers qualifying here to respond to that offer letter that they received from the FSA?
If an offer has not been formally accepted or declined within 30 days from the date of the initial offer, FSA will send a reminder letter and make a phone call or send an email if that contact information is on file. If a response to accept or decline an offer is not received after 60 days from the date of the initial offer, FSA will provide a second reminder notification to those borrowers that a payment will not be processed unless the eligible recipient contacts FSA. Should FSA establish a final deadline, it will be publicly announced, and a final notification will be sent to borrowers at least 30 days in advance of the deadline.
To tie up a couple of loose ends, then, is there any fee charged by the USDA to participate in this program?
There is no fee to participate. FSA employees will assist borrowers with their questions free of charge and will help producers complete any required documents. A third party is not needed to access this assistance. If a borrower is approached by someone seeking a payment to help with this process, please share this information with USDA so we can investigate, as that could possibly be a scam.
An important footnote there. So if a socially disadvantaged producer with loans out there with the USDA qualifies but has not designated their race or ethnicity with their local FSA office, do they need to be taking action at this point?
Yeah, there are a couple different options available to those producers. The first option would be for them to call their local FSA office and inform them that they would like to update their race or ethnicity information over the phone. The second option is to download and print Form AD-2047, fill it out, sign it, and either mail it or hand deliver it to your local FSA office. At this time, there is no deadline to make those updates to race or ethnicity.
And for more information on the implementation of this American Rescue Plan and the debt payments that we're considering here, where might one go?
Yeah, those interested in more information on the debt payments being made under the American Rescue Plan can visit www.farmers.gov/American Rescue Plan. That website is updated when new information is released, and there's also a frequently asked questions section that answers a lot of the questions people may have about the payments. Once again, that website is www.farmers.gov/American Rescue Plan.
This is a fairly recent development concerning USDA loans, and particular loan holders out there. Ask of your local FSA counter about any further details you might want, or again, farmers.gov/American Rescue Plan online. Josh, thanks for briefing us on this and clarifying some of the finer details concerning it right here.
All right. Thank you, Eric. Have a good day.
You as well. He's the Farm Loan Chief with the Farm Service Agency here in Kansas, Josh Ritter, over from the state headquarters here in Manhattan, and joining us for the latest FSA Coffee Talk here on Agriculture Today.
Have you ever thought about where your food comes from? If you're thinking the grocery store, think again. Facts show that the American farmer feeds more than 129 people.
They are continually increasing and improving their operations. A wide variety of crops and livestock are grown in Kansas as well as the United States, providing food to your dinner plate.
Next time you see a farmer or rancher, thank them. For more information, contact K-State Research and Extension.
This is Agriculture Today. Stop, look, and listen.
He was a short, stocky guy, with face blackened, fully armed, and ready.
That's Gus Vanderhoeven of Kansas State University.
This past Monday was Memorial Day. I've heard people say we celebrate Memorial Day. I've never felt comfortable with the expression to celebrate. I have no problem to use the word with a regular funeral of an elderly person, the celebration of his or her life, a full life lived well. But with Memorial Day, other memories come to my mind. The one I've mentioned before is the one soldier who carefully walked down the steps into the cellar where we sought safety during the fight when we were liberated April 4 and 5th, 1945. It was a Canadian soldier of the Canadian Army. He was a short guy, with face blackened, fully armed, and ready. He placed a small burning candle on the floor and told us not to let the light go out. We would be safe. It was dark. Outside the cellar, the battle was going on, slowly moving from farmhouse to farmhouse. In that fight, several Canadians died. They were all young men, we don't celebrate, but we remember. The other day I said to my wife Anneke, the older we get, the more memories we have. Close to what once was the schoolhouse stands a small memorial listing the names of those Canadian soldiers who died in the Leiston battle. In a newly built section of the town on land where part of the battle was fought, the street names and one bridge are named after the soldiers who died. That is to keep the memory alive, not to celebrate. In a small park, also part of the new neighborhood, stands a small iron cross with the name of the soldier who was shot and instantly killed on that exact spot. At that time, what is now park and asphalted road was cropland and dirt path through fields. Fresh flowers are often placed near the white cross. I see it as I talk. People go by on their bikes and children play close by. I've known that place when it was all cropland, wheat, oats, rye, sugar beets. I walked the trail to the country school. I know where it happened, when it happened. I remember. The name on the cross, Corporal Amy Priard, April 4, 1945, Leiston. The young town planner who laid out the streets and plots for the new development said that to facilitate his plan, the small white cross had to be moved to a new location. I'm proud of the older locals who said, "No way! You moved the street." And that is how it was done. The white cross stands where Priard was killed. You don't move history. The street names are attached to a pole at one of the ceremonies to remember a son of one of the fallen soldiers had gone back to the recently developed part of town and was seen trying hard to take the street name of his father out of the ground. The problem was solved as identical street name plates were given to the Canadian families present. There is another story. It is of Peter Hawkins, who is photographed holding the identification card of his father, Alfred Hawkins, who was one of the soldiers killed, and who has a street named after him. The son stands holding the identification card with the bullet hole which killed his soldier dead instantly. The identification card was found by a local and saved, and years later given to the son who flew over from Canada to attend the memorial. The son of the soldier, Alfred Hawkins, Peter Hawkins, looked at the face of his 20-year-old son Jason and notices that Jason looks like the photo of his young father, same facial expression, the father he has never known. When I think about this and much more on Memorial Day, I cannot celebrate. I feel tremendously grateful, and I wished I had met the soldier who stepped down the narrow steps to give us the small candlelight. In my family, there's no one left to thank him. My parents are gone, as are my sister and my brother. I'm sure the soldier is now old or no longer lives. Few are left. As a matter of fact, I have a feeling that he died in the battle. As the battle moved on, a carrier was caught in a hollow road close to the German fortification. The report goes that one soldier carefully took a look over the embankment, and as he did, he was shot through the head. He died instantly. I do not know his name. As I said, the older you get, the more memories you have. Some fade with age, others remain strong. There is the expression, life goes on, and that is good. I know Peter Hawkins, who was given the identification papers of his father with the bullet hole, has a son himself. But I'm also sure that never having known his father, never heard his voice or threw a ball to him, never was hard, even for the grandson. Life goes on, but we will always remember.
Gus Vander Hoeven of Kansas State University. And with that, our Wednesday edition comes to a close. This reminder, each and every one of our broadcasts is archived on the agtoday.net website for re-listening later on, if one so chooses. Right there as well, you can subscribe to our podcast service for an automatic download of each day's broadcast to your mobile device. agtoday.net. In the meantime, we'll return this same time and place tomorrow. Hope you'll be back with us then. Eric Atkinson thanking you for joining us for Agriculture Today. This is the K-State Radio Network.